안녕하세요, 선현우입니다. Hey guys, Hyunwoo here in Seoul, South Korea. This is a video response to a video titled Language Tag by MsSeoul2010, Delali. Thank you for making that video and asking those interesting and important questions. She asked basically 11 questions in her video and tagged some people, like 6 or 7 people, including myself. So I would like to go ahead and answer those questions. Before I answer those questions, I would like to say first that these questions are really important questions, as well as interesting, because you need to know the answers to these questions for yourselves in order to continue learning a new language. Okay, so let me say the questions and answer them briefly. Number 1, what do you consider to be your native language? Of course, Korean, I have no doubt about that. And number 2, by the way, I have the questions right here, so I'm reading it off of my laptop. Number 2, what was your first language learning experience? It was, of course, with English. I talked about how I learned English here in Korea on my own here in this video, so please click here if you want to watch that. If you haven't watched it, it's a very, very lengthy video, a detailed video about how I learned English. Coco was making some noise, so I'm going to hold him like this so that he can't do anything. Number 3, what languages have you studied and why did you start them? The first foreign language that I started learning was English, like I said, and then by the time I entered college, I was supposed to major in English. I was already in the English department, but I wanted to choose something else because I had already spent a lot of time studying English in high school, so I was kind of fed up with it, and so I chose French because French sounded cool. And after that, I went to do my military service for 2 years, and then I came back and I had an opportunity to travel to Japan for maybe 4 days, I guess, on a business trip, on a semi-business trip with my boss. Back then, I was working in publication, so she took me there with another coworker of mine. The fact that I didn't speak a word, didn't know a word of Japanese, made me realize, just knowing English and French is not enough. I thought I was cool knowing French and English as a Korean person who had never been abroad, but I was wrong. So, in Japan, you have to know Japanese. So after coming back from that 4-day trip, I started learning Japanese. And then a similar experience happened again when I went to China for a brief visit in 2007. I didn't know any Chinese. While I was there, I was too busy with work to study Chinese or learn much Chinese. So after I came back, I started learning, and then I started getting a lot of comments on YouTube in Spanish, and I started getting a lot of emails from people in Spanish. So I decided to be able to at least read and understand, but I became more and more interested in speaking Spanish. So I've been practicing my Spanish, and then I found Italian to be quite similar to French and Spanish, and also English. So whenever I see Italian, I try to decipher the meaning, and I'm not actively studying it, but whenever I see, the more Italian I get to encounter, the more I learn automatically. And also, I'm interested in learning more Tagalog and Indonesian. So those are the languages that I have both actively and passively started studying. Number 4, how does your personality affect how you learn languages? Okay, this is, I think, very important. I think everybody's personality affects their language learning. People who are always shy, people who are always worried about things, they are also worried about their language learning, and they never progress. But I tend to have, less worries than other people. So whenever I try something new, I kind of have this confidence that this will work. So even when I study new languages, when I look at some phrases that I don't understand right now, I have this really groundless confidence that I will remember this and somehow use this in a somehow relevant situation in the near future. And I try to do that too. So my personality, my optimism affects my language learning, and I strongly believe that no minute, no second in my language learning sessions, daily language learning sessions, goes to waste. And yeah, I know it can be just an optimistic hope that is not true, but it's good to be able to be hopeful about things. And number 5, do you prefer learning languages in a class or individually? Definitely individually, because everybody learns at a different pace, and I think attending a class can be a good motivation too if the teacher is good, but I prefer learning individually, and actually I hate classes. And number 6, what are your favorite language learning materials? I don't have one. I believe that I can learn from anything, like a piece of newspaper on the street, or something like this. I don't know. Anything is useful. So it depends on what I want to know. And if I have to choose one, I would say the dictionary and grammar books, because I have to have this curiosity to begin with, and then I have to want to know how to say this in that language, and I look it up, and since it was something that I wanted to know, I tend to remember it more easily. And number 7, how much time do you spend actively learning per day or week? Per day, right now, I spend about 15 minutes a day. I know it's not much, but that's all I can set aside these days. But 15 minutes of language learning and practicing is enough to make me happy these days. And number 8, what are your short-term and long-term language learning goals? Long-term, I don't want to say I want to speak this many languages by this year, but I want to learn, at least one language each year from now on. And short term, I want to speak better, of course, Spanish, French, Japanese, Chinese, the languages that I have learned before. And I want to be able to speak more Tagalog and Indonesian. And if I have some time, I want to also practice German. But no offense to German speakers. It's not because German is not interesting, but because all the German speakers I know are fluent in English and French. And number 9, what is your favorite language? Korean. I feel most comfortable in Korean. And number 10, what is the next language you want to learn? I've already answered that question. And number 11, what advice can you give new language learners? Please be more active, and please don't try to follow a curriculum set by some other people. Even though at talktomeinkorean.com, where I teach Korean, we have curriculums and we have set courses. We always encourage people to, actively go for what they want to know. Like, please don't go from lesson 1 to lesson 100, one after another, because, like I always use as an example, if you are a vegetarian and you come to Korea, the most important thing you have to be able to say is, I am vegetarian, rather than, saying, nice to meet you, because, you need to eat, So, yeah, always go for what you need to say, what you want to say, rather than what the book suggests you need to know. That's one piece of advice I can give to new language learners. Yeah, so these are my answers. Hope you found some of them useful for you. And Delali, thanks for the interesting questions and tagging me. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you again in the next video. Bye. 저기 봐요.